potential situation that could be dangerous in the community. As many of you know, many of the city's residents have recently had roofs installed that were a result of the May hailstorm this last spring. We've heard from multiple residents who have discovered during their annual furnace inspection or fall heater inspection system check that they had a problem with their roof vents. The problems are primarily one of two issues. One of them, either the vents got removed and covered up by the new shingle replacement, or the vents may have remained or been replaced, but the vent caps were improperly installed. The reason this is important is those vents, if it's a gas furnace, those flues are important to vent the flue gas out into the atmosphere, which, if done improperly, can cause a buildup of carbon monoxide. And the same thing with the vent caps can do the same thing. It'll cause a blockage of that vent, and those gases can build up inside the house to cause potential health problems. It's not just the furnace flues, it could also be the sewer plumbing vents as well. You could have sewer gas build up, and unlike the carbon monoxide, which is odorless and colorless, the sewer gas definitely has an odor. It's kind of a rotten egg smell. So if you are smelling that is the one indication. So today we would like to urge residents who have had new roofs put on to cause their vents to be inspected by some form of a professional, whether it's a heating, mechanical company, or some other professional in the industry. Residents should not attempt to make their own judgment. These are potentially dangerous situations that a professional should probably look at. This may be an inconvenience, but we feel it's a pretty important item to be aware of. Some of the symptoms that carbon monoxide can cause are headache, dizziness, weakness, upset stomach, vomit, chest pain, and confusion. It can also result in death in extreme cases. Lincoln Fire and Rescue has also weighed in a little bit on this to remind residents to have to leave their homes immediately and dial 911 if they exhibit some of these signs or notice any of the odors or smells associated. And the other thing to come from this, we definitely urge citizens, if they don't have them already, to install proper carbon monoxide detectors in their homes. Current code right now does require carbon monoxide detectors on all levels of residential structures. Particularly in new residential is where we can catch it from our end with the permitting and inspection process, but that doesn't eliminate the importance of having them if the homes were built prior to this requirement. I guess that's really what I have to say today, so if there's some questions.
I mentioned Chief Despain and Chief Mechanical Inspector here as well.
Sure. Fire Chief Mike Despain is here, and my Chief Mechanical Inspector Steve Hartsock is in the room also. They are the group in charged with inspecting for furnace replacements and those items.
When you say multiple, do you mean like a dozen, 2 dozen, 6?
The ones that we know of, that we have confirmed, have been about 4 to 6 in the past week or two. Those are the ones that we know of. We have had contact with a contractor or two that have proactively, once they were made aware of one incident, they proactively went back to each one of the houses that they did re-roofing for and did checks, and they indicated to us that, I think they worded it, they found a number of other improperly installed caps and rectified the situation with their customers.
Do you have, you if a person has this happen, and can they notify the contractor that did the roofing? Are they responsible for making it right?
Yes, I believe that should be the first contact, is to the contractor that they paid to do the work. Even though this work, just reshingling, is not required to get a permit, and if we don't get a permit, we don't inspect it. Just because they're not required to get a permit does not allow them to just not install it properly. It's still the responsibility of that contractor to make sure it's done correctly.
So obviously this contractor had other folks doing the work for his or her company. Or, I mean, it wasn't like a lone contractor who just didn't know what they were doing.
We've had, the residences that we have confirmed have multiple contractors involved, yes. It's not an isolated incident. You know, as you know, every year there's a number of re-roofing projects that go on just due to age or whatever, but when you have rain events or hail events, I mean, like we had in May, there's a pretty good surge of re-roofing activity that goes on. And I guess the theory would be that you got a lot of people coming in and needing to have roofs redone, and there's not enough local capacity to handle that workload.
Have you heard of this happening in other years?
I personally haven't, but I've only been with the department for 3 years now.
Steve, do you know?
I have come across that on several.
Why don't you go on up?
It's not unknown to discover that, though it's quite rare, but I have discovered that incident before.
Do you think you're seeing more of it now because we had so much?
So many went on, yes, yes.
Not that people are getting dumber about re-roofing.
No, I think that there's just a huge influx of people working on this type of project.
This may be more of a question for Chief Despain, but how often should residents inspect this problem?
You really should have your furnace checked every year.
Okay.
Every fall, you should have your furnace checked, because over the course of the winter with it running, your burners should be serviced. And so this can start to create improperly burning gases, which is exacerbated when you have the flue caps not properly installed. And so if you have a furnace that was serviced recently and then the cap misapplied, you will have flue gases coming in, but not at the toxic level of a furnace that was left neglected for a number of years.
And for the detectors, for the carbon monoxide detectors, about how often should those be replaced or inspected themselves?
The factories generally say 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
Hey, Chief, can you, kind of explain how, the firefighters, how they respond when there's a suspected carbon monoxide call?
Well, first of all, we'd like to say thank you to Chad and his team, because one of our concerns is that sudden cold weather, a lot of people will run their heaters, and if they're not checked, we would have this rash of these type of calls that come in. And so we appreciate being able to get the word out and mitigate this so we prevent it before people get hurt, including firefighters. We have had cases where firefighters have went into homes where people are exhibiting a medical emergency, looks like a typical medical illness. However, it turned out to be something in the atmosphere, carbon monoxide usually, and so that creates some concern for us. We do have monitors that we'll be using to help evaluate air as we walk in to help prevent that. But right now, our chief concern is making sure we don't have a significant event within the community, including multiple calls at one time that would impact our service delivery to the rest of the citizens.
Chad, have you guys heard from any of the furnace folks about this? Or has it been from residents themselves?
I believe it's kind of been from both. We have definitely heard from our licensed furnace contractors here in town. They were the ones who contacted us in a couple of instances that they noticed the improper venting.
Do you do you guys have any idea whether this is normal in communities that have a hailstorm or wind damage and have a lot of new roofs? Is this-
Once again, my experience, this is my first experience with this incident, but I've only been with the department for 3 years. I can only imagine that this might not be the first place that this incident has happened. Some communities do require a couple of additional requirements for re-roofing, whether that's contractor licensing. Contractors would actually have to show credentials to be able to do that kind of work in the community. Lincoln does not have that. Or there are some communities, I believe, that would require some form of a permit just for the shingles, which would be an opportunity to prevent this from happening. And I will mention that I have been on the phone with our peers, or our friends over at the Home Builders. They are one of our better contacts for getting a hold of contractors to trying to put together some educational material to anybody that they can reach to make sure that folks involved in this type of construction activity don't make the same mistakes.
And why are you saying that we shouldn't crawl up on our own roof and look?
Because Lincoln Fire and Rescue doesn't want to come to the call.
Not that I would, but, I mean, is it just impossible for a layperson to tell?
It's not impossible, but I think as the agency that's kind of charged with ensuring public safety, we would like to encourage folks to utilize trained professionals, since this can be a life safety situation. We would not like to make that a primary recommendation.
Chad, does this point to the need to really check out your roofing installer before you hire someone?
Well, there's been a number of instances that have come up that I have been very thankful for my experience in my choice of careers. I've been involved in construction and development for a long time, so I take it for granted that I have had a lot of that experience. So if you're asking me personally, yes, I check, all of the contractors that are involved in doing work on my place. Or if, I'm looking at a new place, I know the avenues to check, but not everybody has the benefit of the experience that, those of us in the industry have. So I would definitely encourage that for anybody that's going to be spending quite a bit of money on items that are important as this, to thoroughly check out the folks they hire.
And you spoke about avenues. Which avenues in particular should residents ask those type of questions in order to figure out if their contractor is going to provide the best job possible?
Sure. There's the Better Business Bureau. You can always ask for references from a company. Certainly get more than one quote from different companies. And if you have an outlier price, somebody is half what the others are, a lot of times there's a reason that they're half as much. So you can call down to the department, although we can't comment directly about contractors. There may be things we can say what to look for in a good contractor.
And Chief, this might be for you as well, as a first responder to these types of situations. Since as she was saying, a layperson can't check ourselves, what extra preparations can we take other than just having the detectors in our homes?
Well, first of all, if you have the carbon monoxide detectors in your home, you're going to be alerted to this problem very quickly, and so that's the piece that will save your life and potential keep you from potential harm. So that's a requirement for your home, plus a good business sense. The other piece of information that we're trying to emphasize, though, is if your carbon monoxide detector goes off or you're exhibiting those signs or symptoms, get out of the house immediately and then call 911. Don't wait in the house any longer. The carbon monoxide will build up over time, so it could be a slow uptake of that gas, which collects in your bloodstream. So over time, you might walk into a room and feel fine for a few minutes, but then over time, you may feel something, and you could leave the room and be in perfectly clear air, and the symptoms will continue to get worse because it's built up in your system, and it's excluding your ability to uptake good oxygen. And so that's the risk. And the treatment, it's treatable, but the problem is some of the treatment is difficult to get in the Lincoln area, and we do not have the ability to treat in the hospitals multiple people at once. A few people I believe we could handle, but some of the treatments is pretty specific. You need some special equipment to do that. And so those are the issues that we're concerned with is let's mitigate it, let's prevent it before it happens. And information right now is key, getting it out to the public that right now everyone's at risk of this in terms of bad heaters and appliances, gas-fired appliances. However, right now we just have a more specific risk that's pretty well delineated with homes that were re-roofed since May of 2016, and so that's the primary target audience right now.
Are there some people in the home who will show symptoms first?
Well, people that have they have suppressed immunity. They're typically young children, older adults, people that already have some health concerns, especially respiratory issues, will probably show signs and symptoms earlier than other people, but that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. Different people have different reactions.
And just to clarify, carbon monoxide is potentially deadly, but sewer gas is just dangerous. Is that
Well,
correct?
so the hydrogen sulfide also could be dangerous. It just requires a little bit more. The concentration needs a little bit higher. The nice thing is you'll typically smell that one, even though it's still colorless. It does have an odor, and so that's not the biggest concern we have. But in terms of people re-roofing homes and not properly placing the vents or blocking them, it could be a secondary hazard that you may not know. And again, that gas could be accumulating in your attic space or in a basement, someplace you don't go normally. And so we just address that in the news release also as an additional risk that we've seen before.